I watched them drink the very fertility tonic they tried to force on me. They thought it would finally bring them the grandson they craved. They didn't know it was a poison designed to feast on the guilt of those who murder their own granddaughters. They say a mother's love knows no bounds. But what if that love, twisted by generations of obsession and expectation, becomes something else entirely? A poison served in a fragile porcelain mug, meant to create a new life but instead, destroying the one I had. This is a story about how a simple, seemingly innocent drink became the first act in a very personal tragedy. It all started in my pristine, stainless steel kitchen, a space usually a sanctuary for me. My mother-in-law, Carol, isn't one for cooking, so when she came over with a steaming mug, calling it a fertility tonic from a renowned wellness guru in Sedona, my instincts immediately went into overdrive. The concoction she presented was thick, dark, and smelled vaguely metallic, like fresh pennies mixed with something earthy and rotten. Carol, with her perfectly coiffed hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes, insisted I drink it. "Just a few sips every morning," she whispered, her voice laced with an unsettling urgency, "and we can finally get the grandson my family has been waiting for. This is our legacy, Eliza, a strong, strapping boy for Ethan." My body was no longer my own. It was a vessel, and my purpose was to fulfill a destiny I never chose. The pressure was immense, a silent weight that had been crushing me since the day Ethan and I got married. It wasn't about my health or my happiness. It was about tradition, about legacy, about a boy I didn't even know if I wanted. If you've ever felt like your body was not your own, like a pawn in someone else's game, please hit that like button to let me know I'm not alone, and let's unravel this twisted story together. The mug sat on the kitchen counter, its contents cooling into a thick, gelatinous sludge. I couldn't bring myself to touch it, let alone force it down my throat. But simply refusing would have meant a confrontation, a battle I knew I would lose with Carol. That's when the chilling thought occurred to me. If this concoction was truly as beneficial as she claimed, why should I be the only one to enjoy its blessings? They were the ones so desperate for a grandson, so consumed by their legacy. It was only fitting that they share in the experience. A cold, quiet determination settled over me, a feeling I hadn't known in years. I waited for Carol to get distracted, her attention fixed on pruning her rose bushes just outside the window. Moving with a stillness that felt almost foreign to me, I poured half of the syrupy liquid into Ethan's insulated lunch container, swirling it into the beef chili he loved. The other half I mixed into a rich, savory gravy I knew Carol would be enjoying for her afternoon snack. I worked with the precision of a chemist, my hands steady and my mind clear. This wasn't an act of malice. It was an act of shared responsibility. When I handed Ethan his lunch and presented Carol with her stew, I smiled. It was the most genuine smile I had given them in months, because for the first time, the script wasn't theirs to write. It felt like a tiny, secret victory. It's a strange feeling, isn't it? When you find yourself standing at a crossroads and choose a path you never thought you'd take. If you've ever had to make a choice that felt both necessary and terrifying, please share your experience below. That moment felt like the first breath of true freedom I'd had in a very long time. I didn't have to wait long. The seeds of chaos I had sown that afternoon began to sprout in the dead of night. A piercing shriek tore through the silence of our home, a sound not of pain, but of pure, unadulterated terror. It came from the guest room, where Carol had decided to stay the night. Ethan and I rushed in to find a scene of disarray. The bedside lamp was knocked over, and Carol was huddled in the corner of the king-sized bed, clutching the expensive duvet to her chin. Her usually immaculate hair was disheveled, and her face, illuminated by the hallway light, was a ghostly white. She was trembling uncontrollably, her eyes wide and fixed on a dark corner of the room. "Mom, what is it? What's wrong?" Ethan asked, rushing to her side. I followed, playing the part of the concerned daughter-in-law, my heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and a dark, thrilling curiosity. "It wasn't a dream," she whispered, her voice a ragged, hoarse sound. "It was a memory, coming for me. It was crawling, Ethan, asking me why I did it, why I let it happen." She refused to say what it was, dissolving into incoherent sobs. I brought her a glass of water, my hands steady as I offered it to her shaking ones. Inside, I was reeling. This was more potent than I could have ever imagined. That tonic wasn't just some strange herbal remedy. It was a key designed to unlock the darkest, most deeply buried rooms in the labyrinth of a guilty mind. As Ethan finally calmed her down, she looked over at me. Her eyes, usually so sharp and calculating, were now filled with a primal, hunted fear. In that moment, I knew this was only the beginning. I carried Ethan's insulated lunch container, the very one I had spiked with the tonic, to his home office, a space he treated as his private fortress. I'd never been allowed in there without explicit permission, so when I found the door ajar, I saw my opportunity. He was on a call in the other room, and in his rush, he had left his laptop open on his desk. The screen was a window into a different life, one I never knew existed. It wasn't an explicit picture or a lovey-dovey text message. It was something far more chilling and precise. It was a chat window with a name I recognized. Dr. Kinsley, his colleague from the university. The messages were a clinical, almost academic exchange about their future. "The appointment went great," she wrote. "I can't believe it, Ethan. I'm pregnant." My heart didn't break. It froze. My mind, usually a whirlwind of anxious thoughts, went completely silent. "We have to be smart about this," he'd replied. "I'll handle the situation at home. You need to focus on us and on our baby." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not just an affair, but a planned future, a new life. While they coldly discussed how to handle me, the inconvenient wife, the failed vessel, I was not a partner to him. I was a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be removed. This wasn't a betrayal born of passion. It was a cold-blooded calculation. All the anger that had been simmering within me combusted into a silent, white-hot fury, burning away every last shred of the naive girl I used to be. It's a surreal moment when you realize everything you believed about your life was a lie. If you've ever had a trust so deeply broken, where you went from being a partner to a problem, please leave a comment below and share your story with a number broken trust. The word baby on that screen was like a key, unlocking a door in my mind I thought was sealed shut forever. The past didn't just come back. It flooded me, drowning me in a torrent of pain and betrayal I had repressed for years. I saw myself years ago, fragile and full of hope, announcing my first pregnancy. The look of sheer joy on Ethan's face seemed genuine then. But that joy was short-lived. I remembered the accidental slip on the polished hardwood floors of our hallway, the fall that ended my first hope. I recalled Carol's face, pale with a feigned grief as she clutched my hand, whispering, "Such a shame. Maybe next time it'll be a boy." The second time, I was more careful. But the accident was more deliberate. I remembered Carol reaching out, her hand on my back as I stood at the top of the staircase. A sudden shove. I tumbled down, the world a chaotic blur of polished wood and white walls. In the hospital, my body was empty, my soul hollowed out. But the memory that cut the deepest was of my beloved dog, Pip. After my second loss, he was my lifeline, the one creature who offered unconditional love in that cold, sterile house. I poured all my remaining love into him. And then, one day, he was just gone. They told me he'd run away, and in my grief-stricken state, I believed them. But now, the memory of them talking came back. "Got rid of that thing," Ethan had said, his voice cold. "She was getting too attached. It's for the best. It wasn't an accident." None of it was. The slips, the falls, the disappearance of my only friend, it was all by design. They were murderers. And now, they were planning to bring a new life into the world, an innocent child born of their lies and my pain. The fury I felt was not just about a cheating husband. It was about the innocent lives they had extinguished, and the one they were now planning to bring into the world. The grief and the rage didn't break me. They forged me into something new, something hard and sharp. The old Eliza, the quiet, accommodating wife who lived in fear of saying the wrong thing, died in that home office. In her place stood a woman with a singular, ice-cold purpose to make them pay for every single life they had destroyed. I knew I couldn't do it alone. I needed an ally, someone who saw the world not in shades of gray, but in the stark black and white of justice and retribution. I picked up my phone and called Jenna, my best friend from college, now a private investigator in the city. We hadn't spoken in years, My marriage had isolated me, but I knew she was the only one who would understand. We met in a dimly lit bar on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place where secrets could be shared without judgment. I laid out the entire story for her. The metallic-tasting tonic, Carol's terrifying nightmares, Ethan's clinical affair with Dr. Kinsley, the baby they were planning, and finally, the flood of memories my two lost girls, my sweet Pip. I didn't cry. My voice was low and steady, each word a carefully placed stone in the foundation of my new reality. Jenna listened without interruption, her expression growing harder and colder with every detail. When I finished, she didn't offer sympathy or condolences. She simply took a long sip of her whiskey and looked me dead in the eye. "They didn't just betray you, Eliza," she said, her voice like flint striking steel. "They tried to erase you. So, what's the plan?" That was the moment everything changed. "I don't just want to hurt them," I said, leaning forward. "I want to dismantle them, piece by piece. Their reputation, their sanity, their precious legacy. Everything." Jenna's lips curled into a sharp, dangerous smile. "Good," she said. "Let's get to work." Our first target was Carol. Her mind, already primed by the tonic, was a fertile ground of guilt and paranoia. Jenna and I agreed that our approach wouldn't be direct. It would be insidious. We would orchestrate a haunting, a high-tech one tailored specifically for her. Jenna, with her particular set of skills, found a backdoor into Carol's smart home system with unnerving ease. People trade their security for convenience every day, never imagining who might be on the other side. Suddenly, we had control of everything. The lights, the speakers, the thermostat, and every screen in her sprawling, empty house. We started small, subtle things to make her question her sanity. The faint sound of a baby's cry, downloaded from a sound effects library, played through her Sonos speaker at exactly 3:13 a.m. every night. The nursery rhyme, "Hush," little baby would whisper from the Amazon Echo in her kitchen as she made her morning coffee. She complained to Ethan that she was hearing things, that the house felt wrong. He, ever the rational academic, dismissed it as stress and fatigue. Then, we escalated. One evening, as she was settling in to watch her favorite political talk show, the 70-inch screen in her living room flickered and went black. A new image faded in. A grainy, distorted ultrasound video. A tiny, flickering heartbeat. And then a whisper, amplified through her surround sound system. A child's voice, digitally altered to be both innocent and chilling. "Why, Grandma? Why didn't you want me?" The phone call I received from a frantic Ethan described a scene of pure chaos. Carol was screaming, throwing a crystal vase at the screen, utterly convinced she was being haunted by the ghosts of the grandchildren she helped destroy. I rushed over, of course, playing the role of the comforting, concerned daughter-in-law, all while my heart beat with the cold, steady rhythm of success. It's a dark path to walk, the line between justice and revenge. I have to ask you, sitting there watching this right now, do you think what I did was justified, or did I cross a line? Let me know your honest opinion in the comments below. While I was playing the ghost in Carol's machine, Jenna was hunting a different kind of monster. She flew to Arizona to investigate the so-called wellness guru from Sedona who had supplied that vile tonic. What she uncovered was far more sinister than some New Age charlatan selling snake oil. The retreat was a heavily guarded, isolated compound, less like a health spa and more like a cult headquarters for the desperate and wealthy. Posing as a desperate wife unable to conceive, Jenna managed to get inside and acquire a pure, unadulterated sample of the elixir for a private lab analysis. A few days later, she called me, her voice stripped of its usual sarcastic edge. It was grim. "You're not going to believe this, Eliza," she said. The lab results were in. The tonic wasn't a fertility drug. It was a sophisticated biochemical weapon. It contained a cocktail of powerful, unregulated psychotropic herbs, massive doses of animal hormones. Specifically, the lab identified compounds extracted from the placentas of wild canids like wolves and coyotes, and, most terrifyingly, a rare fungal compound. This fungus, she explained, was known in certain fringe scientific circles to be a potent guilt amplifier. It didn't just cause hallucinations. It aggressively targeted the neural pathways associated with repressed memory and moral anxiety. In a person with a relatively clear conscience, it might cause only mild unease. But in someone like Carol, someone harboring dark, unforgivable secrets, it was a detonator for the bomb that was already ticking inside her mind. My blood ran cold. This wasn't some ancient, superstitious poison. Carol had purchased a vial of weaponized guilt, and in her blind obsession, she had brought it right into our home, never realizing she was a far more suitable target for it than I ever was. With Carol's sanity hanging by a thread, consumed by the ghosts we had unleashed, it was time to turn our attention to Ethan. He lived and died by his reputation, his carefully constructed image as a brilliant, ethical academic on the fast track to tenure. So that's precisely what we decided to burn to the ground. The stage was the university's annual Founders Gala, a black-tie affair in a grand ballroom glittering with the intellectual and financial elite of the institution. Ethan was the guest of honor, slated to receive the Faculty of the Year award, the final jewel in the crown of his tenure application. I was on his arm, playing the role of the proud, supportive wife to perfection, smiling until my cheeks ached. Meanwhile, Jenna, from a coffee shop miles away, was poised to strike. As the university president began his glowing introduction, the tribute video began to play on the massive screens flanking the stage. For 30 seconds, it was a montage of Ethan's achievements. Then, it flickered. The screen cut to grainy security footage from inside Ethan's office. Him and Dr. Kinsley, not in a passionate embrace, but in a moment of cold, calculated intimacy. Then, the audio kicked in a recording from a bug Jenna had planted. "She's becoming unstable." Ethan's voice boomed through the ballroom's sound system. "But it's fine. We'll handle it after the gala." The screen then filled with their chat logs, their callous plans for my disposal laid bare for everyone to see. The video ended with a crystal-clear, high-resolution image of Dr. Kinsley's ultrasound photo. The silence in that room was a physical thing, a crushing weight that sucked all the air out. I watched the color drain from Ethan's face as his entire world was incinerated in 90 seconds of irrefutable truth. When a betrayal is that profound, do you believe public humiliation is a fitting punishment, or does it go too far? Type justice or too far in the comments below. The fallout from the gala was immediate and brutal. The university suspended both Ethan and Dr. Kinsley, pending a full ethics investigation that was, for all intents and purposes, a public execution of their careers. But the real implosion was happening behind closed doors, and thanks to Jenna, I had a front row seat. She continued her surveillance, wanting to see how the rats would turn on each other in a sinking ship. She captured a series of frantic, vitriolic text messages and one crucial, rage-filled phone call between them. In the recording, Ethan was a man completely unhinged. He wasn't apologetic or heartbroken. He was furious, blaming Dr. Kinsley for being careless, for getting caught, for ruining him. In a desperate, grasping attempt to find some justification for the smoldering crater his life had become, he demanded to know the sex of the baby. Through her sobs, Dr. Kinsley told him she had just gotten the results from an early blood test. It was a girl. There was a long, chilling silence on the line. Then Ethan's voice, stripped of all emotion, came through, cold and flat. "A girl? You mean I blew up my entire life? For another girl? It was for nothing." The cruelty was breathtaking. He told her in no uncertain terms that she needed to terminate the problem. The baby, once the symbol of their bright new future, was now just a liability, a piece of evidence to be disposed of before the university's disciplinary hearing. A week later, Jenna confirmed that Dr. Kinsley had an appointment at a private clinic. She had done it. She had sacrificed her career, her reputation, and now her child for a man who saw her as nothing more than a failed incubator for his precious legacy. When Jenna told me, I didn't feel triumph. I just felt a profound, bone-deep chill. I had set the stage, but the truly monstrous acts were all his own. With Ethan's world reduced to ash and Dr. Kinsley out of the picture, there was one final, frayed thread left to tie off. Carol. Her mind was completely fractured. The combination of the weaponized tonic and our psychological campaign had shattered her reality beyond repair. The official diagnosis was severe, rapid onset psychosis. Ethan, now a ghost rattling around our empty house, was incapable of dealing with her. So, I stepped in, ever the dutiful daughter-in-law. I told him I'd found a specialized care home for her, a quiet, private facility where she could get the round-the-clock help she so desperately needed. The place I chose was a bleak, isolated institution in the vast, empty plains of rural Nebraska, 1,000 miles from anyone who ever knew her name. Ethan, broken and apathetic, signed the committal papers without even reading them. But this was never about getting her help. It was about containment. Jenna vetted and hired a specific caregiver, a stern, emotionless woman who, for a significant and untraceable cash bonus each month, agreed to follow a very particular set of instructions. There would be no physical abuse, nothing that would ever show up on a report. The torment was to be subtle, tailored, and perpetual. Once a month, the caregiver was to place a single, pink baby booty on Carol's nightstand while she slept. Every few weeks, she was to whisper, "They're asking for you, Carol," just as she was drifting off to sleep. The goal was no longer to drive her mad. She was already there. The goal was to build the walls of her personal hell a little higher each day, brick by brick, ensuring that she could never, ever escape the ghosts that she herself had created. And it makes me wonder, sitting here telling you this story tonight, do you believe some crimes deserve a punishment that never ends, a torment that lasts a lifetime? Share your thoughts on this, because it's something I still grapple with. With Carol gone, a heavy, waiting silence fell over the house. It was just Ethan and me, two ghosts haunting the wreckage of a life. He was a hollowed-out man, aimlessly wandering through the ruins of his ambition, and I was the patient predator, waiting for the perfect moment for the final act. I proposed one last trip, my voice woven with false nostalgia and grief. "Let's go to the cabin in Vermont," I suggested. "Like we used to get away from everything, to try and heal." The cabin was where he had proposed to me, a place steeped in the poison of his lies. He looked at me with those empty eyes and numbly agreed. He was so consumed by his own self-pity that he never even saw the trap being laid. That first night at the cabin, with a fire crackling in the stone hearth, I poured him a glass of expensive scotch. A final, melancholic toast to the life we never had. He didn't notice the tasteless, potent sedative I stirred into the amber liquid. He drank it down, and his world faded to black. When he woke, it was to the biting grip of thick rope on his wrists and ankles. He was bound tightly to a heavy oak chair in the center of the room. Panic flared in his eyes. "Eliza? What is this?" "Untie me," he demanded, his voice thick with the drug's residue. I sat in the armchair opposite him, perfectly calm, watching the firelight dance across his terrified face. "The memory loss, Ethan," I said, my voice soft but sharp as a shard of glass. "It wasn't permanent." The confusion on his face slowly curdled into dawning horror as the implication of my words sank in. "I remember everything," I continued, leaning forward. "I remember the fall on the stairs. I remember the slick polish on the hardwood floors. I remember you telling your mother you'd gotten rid of that thing." His name was Pip. The last mask was finally ripped away. He wasn't looking at his broken wife anymore. He was looking at his executioner,